let me ask you something. If people come in late today, I'm wondering, should we charge maybe a late fee at the door, do you think? Would that be okay? Yeah, okay. I didn't think so. But in the interest of time, it's still a couple minutes, but let me go ahead and start. And so with that, good afternoon. My name is Steve, and I'm really glad you chose to take a little bit of time out of what would probably normally be a busy Saturday for you to come join us today. And also for those of you watching on live stream, welcome. That includes my poor wife who's home with that terrible lung virus now. But anyway, we appreciate your coming today. And we've all worked very hard, I think, to make this seminar just something special. Something that you can take away with you, something maybe memorable, and who knows, maybe even something life-changing. All right, well, let's move ahead. Now, in order for us to kind of prepare to launch out in our minds into the vastness of this universe, I'd like you to listen, mostly listen. You're going to see, I think, a picture of a star field in the background, but Dr. John MacArthur, I have this recorded, and he kind of gives I thought, a nice condensed summary, about a 1 minute or so summary of the pertinent facts about the universe that I thought was very appropriate. So take a listen to Dr. MacArthur here.
You know that if the Earth's rotation should slow down just a little bit, we would ultimately freeze and burn? Or did you know that the sun has a surface temperature of 12,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and if it were any closer or further away, we would freeze or burn? You know that our globe is tilted at exactly 23 degrees, and if it wasn't, at that exact angle, vapors from the ocean would move north and south and pile up massive continents of ice? Did you know that if the moon did not remain at its exact distance from the Earth, the ocean tides would inundate the land twice every day? You know that if the ocean slipped to just a couple of feet depth further than it is, carbon dioxide and oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere would be completely absorbed and no vegetable life could exist? Did you know that if the atmosphere didn't remain constant in the Earth, but it thinned out, millions of meteors which are harmlessly burned up in space would pummel the Earth in a barrage of bombardment that would devastate us all? Who holds the delicate balance? Keeps it all working?
All right, we're going to answer that question that Dr. MacArthur just asked, and that's one of the goals I have in this next hour. Now, I'd like you to watch just a very short, kind of a music-enhanced, more formal introduction to today's seminar. Take a look. All right. I think that's pointing us in the right direction. Now, aliens, the multiverse, or God, a clash of world views. And I wanted that theme to be, just a little bit captivating, maybe just a little bit mysterious. And toward the end of our time together today, you're going to hear a little bit about those first two components, aliens, or extraterrestrial life, and the possibilities of that. What's the implication there? And then, of course, the issue of the multiverse. Now, it's kind of like what it sounds. It's a theory that there are it's not just this one universe, scientists are saying. It is perhaps an infinite number. You're going to hear a little bit more about that. I think my friend Mike is going to talk about that too. And also our special guest presenter that I recorded just last night, Dr. Miller. Now, the issue of the universe as a multiverse also includes things that you might have heard of, like quantum theories, a quantum flux, the string theory, that all these kind of strange, mystical sounding terms that I think really is a way that scientists have of just not having to deal head on with a lot of the newest evidence there is for the universe's amazing design. Now, there's a widely acclaimed group. You may have heard of them. They're called the Discovery Institute. And from their website, I pulled off this, I think, kind of helpful summary of our time together today. Quote, "The theory of intelligent design holds that certain features of the universe and of living things are best explained by an intelligent cause, not an undirected process such as natural selection," unquote. I think that puts us on the right path. And so clearly it's our intent this afternoon to focus on the profound new evidence of an extra-dimensional intelligence. And you know what? That's the formal sanitized way that scientists have come up with to avoid the G word. They're talking about God. So, okay, we can go with that. An extra-dimensional intelligence is what they say. Now, there is just piling up a lot of accumulated good data from scientific disciplines like from astrophysics and microbiology. And the building scientific evidence truly is revealing the existence of this super designing intelligence. Well, that would strongly counter what's been being taught today and has been for years and years, even way back when I was in grammar school, many years from biology classes and then in maybe the higher institutions, astronomy, physics, and even philosophy classes. And in textbooks everywhere and by professors who stand there with chalkboards behind them, but it's always kind of the same theme on origins. It's a Darwinian evolutionary model with almost without exception. Now that's changing, but a lot of you haven't heard that that's changing, and some of you, maybe all of you, many of you, have been brought up in homes where you went to school. If you went to a regular secular public school, you would have been just told that that's the thing. It's not just a theory, but it's a proven fact, this Darwinian evolution and mindless evolution of everything there is. So the site, there's a site for discovery called discovery.org, and that's the website for that institute I mentioned. And there's a lot of great evidence up there on intelligent design, and I've read a lot of their articles, seen a lot of their videos, and I would encourage you. It's on the read and watch list, by the way, that's on the counter out there. You can pick up as you go. And let me share with you 3 points that I think represent a really good compact summary of these evidences. So here are the first couple. There must have been a cause outside of this space-time universe. The second, through some unimaginably sudden and powerful event, this cause was capable of generating all space, time, matter, and energy that make up this universe. And further, that this cause was also capable of generating all the order that we see that's inherent within the universe via the natural laws that govern it. Okay, well that sets, I think, the stage pretty well for the theme today. And you know, some scientists actually are starting to cross over. They're being bold enough to, and kind of shocking their colleagues by saying, you know what, this evidence really is pretty compelling. There must be some kind of intelligence responsible for all of this mysterious and inexplicable, what's called razor's edge fine-tuning of what scientists call the cosmological constants. Mike will be sharing a little bit about that, and so will our guest presenter in a few minutes, Dr. Miller. The cosmological constants, in fact, balanced on a razor's edge. I read recently, one scientist said, you know, in looking at this, there's no razor that's fine enough known to man, nor could man's technology produce a razor fine enough to indicate just how razor's edge and balance these universe constants have to be, including the laws of physics like gravity, strong and weak nuclear forces, etc. However, most Darwinian committed scientists, they're still stubbornly refusing to move away from the traditional theories of a non-intelligent cause for everything we see in the universe. And there's old Darwin up there, and he kind of hoped he was right. Well, unfortunately, he wasn't. Well, not unfortunately, fortunately, he wasn't. But you know, our generation, I think, is especially fortunate in this regard. We live in an era where the scientific discoveries, astronomers, astrophysicists, etc., have opened up a universe and a world that's just rich in mystery and majesty. And let's look at this now. The incredible detail that's streaming in from deep space now via the Hubble Space Telescope, been up there actually a number of years. COBE, another satellite, and Webb, the newest one now. The Webb is particularly interesting because it takes infrared photographs, and with those infrared, I don't begin to understand all the detail, but they're looking further out into space than has ever been seen before. Deep space, and just mind-boggling. And they're learning some stunning facts. Now, not only are there more galaxies than they ever predicted, billions, in fact, they now think maybe trillions of galaxies. There are also, several scientists have hypothesized they can't see exactly how many stars, of course, are in each of these big galaxies. But you know, the middle of a galaxy, by the way, you've seen pictures of them, you're going to see more shortly, where all you see, it just looks like a bright light in the middle of that galaxy. Well, those are stars, and they're so quote-unquote close together. I mean, each one probably many light years apart, but there's so many of them that it just looks like a solid bright white light. And some scientists have estimated there on a couple of those big galaxies way out there, there could be literally trillions of stars just in one galaxy. It's just mind-numbing to think about. 1 billion stars in our own Milky Way, and some scientists think maybe 2 billion. No way to count them all because we're in the Milky Way. Now what you're seeing here in this picture is an edge of the Milky Way. I don't know if any of you have been lucky enough to see that, but if you're in a very dark environment on a dark night, and probably you need one of those time-lapse cameras or something, you can actually see this in the sky. That's just we're at the far edge of our galaxy out in one of those spiral rings, and that's a little bit of it that you can see up there. And there could be as many as 200 billion stars in our galaxy. Now, I checked this with one of our members here who's a mathematician, Dr. Brown, and I said, can you just run the math for me? Tell me if this is right. I just read this somewhere on the internet. And it says that, okay, let's say that you have a lifespan of 80 years. I hope it's longer than that because I'm getting too close to that. But let's say you started counting in a lifespan of 80 years, and you could start counting when you were an infant, and you counted 1, 2, 3, etc. You counted one number for each second. And you did that 8 hours a day for 80 years. Okay, you got that? You still would not be anywhere close to 100 billion. That's how big that number is. And so that, I think, is a little bit impressive about the universe that's around us. All right, but back down to Earth. Now, most of you have heard of the standard drumbeat I've talked about already a little bit, of scientists who study origins, and they're still wanting to proclaim that original strict theory of Darwinian evolution. This being, of course, the doctrine that everything in the universe and of all life came about by three things: processes that are undirected, unguided, and unplanned. All right? And this has been touted for many years by science popularizers like Bill Nye the Science Guy. Anybody ever heard of Bill Nye the Science Guy? Okay, a number of you. Well, by the way, I looked him up because I was kind of curious. I really hadn't seen much of the guy. And it says that Bill Nye the Science Guy actually has a degree in mechanical engineering, not in the sciences at all. But he talks, he talks well. I guess that's why the producers thought he'd be pretty good for their programs. But these are all proclaiming, and you hear this, by the way, also on programs like Nova all of the time. It drives me nuts because it's always the same mantra, which is billions of years, mindless evolution, no God needed and no God allowed in that respect. So, even with the burgeoning new evidence to the contrary, some scientists are just doubling down on these orthodox views. And fortunately for us, I think, that's being more and more strongly contested worldwide by people that are working in the field of ID. I will shortcut that for the rest of this hour, but that's intelligent design, and the field of ID or intelligent design. And that includes information that's coming from the space telescopes, but also being studied in the biology laboratories. So, one, though, man who lived a while back, the 1600s, a man by the name of Blaise Pascal. Now, some of you may have heard of Pascal's wager. That's pretty well known. You can look that up on the internet when you get home. But a very wise man, I think. He was a French mathematician, an inventor, a writer, and a Christian philosopher. And he wrote these astute words, quote, "The evidence of God's existence and his gift is more than compelling, but those who insist that they have no need of him will always find ways to discount his offer." I thought that was a fairly astute quote. Now, back up to the stars. In our era, those scientists within that growing field of ideas I described, the universe and all life on planet Earth, and key proponents like Dr. Stephen Meyer. He's a brilliant pioneer, by the way, in this intelligent design movement, and Dr. Brian Miller, who you're going to hear in just a few minutes. This is a really fortunate interview I was able to get. They point out that the interpretation of so much of the new data is really stunning. And so that's really our anchoring position for today. Now, what I'd like you to do is, I want to do the next best thing, since we can't walk outside right now. It's a little bright and sunny, and you're not going to see many stars out there, but we'll do something maybe even a little better. We're going to look through the eyes of the Hubble and the Webb space telescopes, and we're going to launch on out into the universe. So sit back. I think I would recommend that you tighten your shoulder harnesses and tighten up your seatbelts a little bit and look with us and just wonder at the awesome vastness of the universe. Here we go. Short answer, yes it does. The newest evidence does certainly support that. Now, I'm very pleased to have this special, it's really a late addition to our seminar today. It was a unique opportunity that I explored months ago by booting up a request for a speaker through their website, discovery.org, and they warn you right on that meeting request that they get thousands of requests, and don't hold your hopes up, in other words. So I didn't. I hadn't heard anything for a long time. About 2 weeks ago, I got an email, and the person, the scheduler there, asked me if we were still interested in having someone speak at the seminar. Well, we couldn't have him out today. His schedule was just too packed, so we did a Zoom interview. Now, it was a really unique opportunity, and this man is Dr. Brian Miller. We have a Dr. Miller here at our church who's a medical doctor, but this is Dr. Brian Miller. He's a senior scientist. He's affiliated with the Discovery Institute, and that's an outstanding international scientific organization. And Dr. Miller holds degrees from MIT and a PhD from Duke University, where his specialty was complex systems physics. I mean, wow, that's way beyond me right there, just the title. That was his specialty. Now, Dr. Miller, he's in Seattle. He was just back from a keynote speaker's role at a convention out of the country. And Dr. Miller, barely over his jet lag probably, has agreed to share some of these amazing scientific facts with us in this Zoom interview I had with him about 9 o'clock last night, about 6 p.m. his time in Seattle. You'll hear him describe some fascinating information on this solar system's intricate design and balance. And that, of course, includes this tiny, beautiful blue planet that we're standing or sitting on right now, third one out from our own sun. All right, let's watch and listen to this recorded interview from last night with Dr. Brian Miller.
Well, good evening. I have a distinct honor here this evening to welcome Dr. Brian Miller. Now, Dr. Miller, this is truly a special opportunity for us here in Greenville County, South Carolina, at this little seminar, to have someone of your background sharing with us this evening from the West Coast. And for our audience, I'll share a very brief bio of yours, as I read it off of the Discovery Institute's site, which tells us that you are currently the research coordinator and senior fellow for the Center for Science and Culture at Discovery Institute, and further that you hold degrees in both physics and engineering from MIT and Duke University. Also, I pulled out a few of your accomplishments here off the site that I thought was somewhat impressive, and it says this. It says that you have contributed multiple books to multiple books and journals covering the debate over intelligent design, including The Mystery of Life's Origins, The Continuing Controversy, The Comprehensive Guide to Science and Faith, and an Inference Review. And that you are a regular contributor to Evolution News and Science Today, and ID the Future podcast, of which I've seen several, and they are very, very interesting. Now, I know you are taking time out of your incredibly busy schedule to share with us, and I'm particularly thankful of that. And your particular expertise in much of the key scientific evidence that's been building, especially I would think in this new century, pertaining to intelligent design. So I greatly appreciate your telling us specifically a bit about the carefully balanced design inherent within this universe and our solar system. So, Dr. Miller.
Thank you. It's really an honor for me to speak for your church. Now, what I want to share with you is some of the evidence for design in nature. And this evidence is really significant for me because when I was in college, I became very convinced that the Christian faith was a psychological crutch. I thought people either had to be people of science who were thoughtful and intellectually honest and pursued the truth and looked at evidence, or you were a person of faith who just sort of believed things blindly. So I was becoming pretty convinced God didn't exist. So I looked to the heavens and I said, God, I don't know if you do exist, but if you do exist, you really have to prove it to me because I'm a scientist. I just can't follow this blindly. And in God's mercy, he took me along a path where I was able to meet experts in physics and chemistry and biology, church history, and many other disciplines, which really helped to bring me back to faith. both in terms of the science and in terms of many other pieces of evidence for the truth of the Christian faith. So what I'll do with you in the next few minutes is just give you a quick tour of what this evidence is in our universe that points to a creator. And for that, what I'm going to do is share my screen and bring up my PowerPoint presentation. And the first slide that you see represents a couple of musicians who are working on a mixer board. And I want you to imagine that this mixer board actually represents a machine that generates universes. So this machine would allow you to create any universe you wanted. You could control the strength of the force of gravity, the mass of a proton. You could control everything from the order or disorder of the universe. And as it turns out, almost any settings that you could choose for your universe creating machine would generate a universe that could not support life. In fact, to have a universe that supports life, many of these dials have to be carefully set so that many of the parameters are within very tight ranges. And some have to be set with unimaginable precision. And a couple examples I'll give is one is the force of gravity. Because if you imagine what the force of gravity could have been, and you could imagine it could have been anywhere from 0 to the strength of the strong nuclear force, which is the strongest force that we have in nature, and that's the force that holds the protons and neutrons together. And what happens is, in order for the universe to support life, you would have to set gravity correct to 1 part in 10 to the power of 35. That's a 1 over 1 with 35 zeros. So the precision that you would need to set gravity on your universe-generating machine for the universe to support life is the same precision you would need if you were shooting a target that was 1 inch by 1 inch at the other end of our solar system. That's the sort of precision you need to create a universe that can support life. And a second example is what's called the cosmological constant. And this constant represents what would be considered the background energy of space. And what it does is it causes the universe to expand. And what happens is, if you look at fields of physics like particle theories or quantum field theories, we would expect that this energy that permeates space would be so large that our universe would fly apart in an instant. Every atom would be like millions of light years away. But what happens is there's some sort of compensating value to this cosmological constant. And that compensating value has to be set correctly to 1 part in 10 to the power of 90. That's a 1 with 90 zeros behind it. Because if it was slightly greater or slightly smaller, what would happen is our universe would either fly apart, and of course life would not be possible, or it would crunch together into a giant black hole. So those are just 2 of multiple examples of details of our universe that have to be set just right for our universe to support life. But it isn't just that we see the evidence of the mind behind the laws of nature. We also see extraordinary evidence of design related to everything from the nature of our planet, to chemistry, to biology. In fact, Sir Fred Hoyle is a cosmologist, a person who studies the universe, and he was an atheist before he died. He now believes in God, obviously. But when he was alive, he wanted to not accept the evidence of design in nature, but he realized the evidence of design was so overwhelming he couldn't ignore it. So what he said was, a common sense interpretation of the data suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as with chemistry and biology. And again, what we find is people have desperately tried to rationalize away the evidence of design our universe. And the way they've done that is they said, maybe there's not just one universe, but maybe there's countless universes. And these universes have slightly different laws of nature. That we just happen to be in the universe that won the lottery and just happens to have the right details that allows for life. Well, the problem is, when you look at all the theories that supposedly explain how these multiverses could come about, those theories, whether it be eternal inflation or string landscape theory or quantum cosmology, they all have parameters that also have to be incredibly fine-tuned for these multiverse generating systems to produce a universe like ours. So the evidence of fine-tuning is inescapable. But it's not just the laws of physics. If you look at our planet, there are countless details of our planet that have to be carefully set for life to exist. Our atmosphere has to have the right amount of oxygen, because if there is too much, it would cause our body to decay like an apple core would rot in air. If there was too little oxygen, we wouldn't be able to have enough energy to have active lifestyles. The sun is very stable, it produces the right type of energy. The Earth is the right distance from the sun, and there's other details. Like the fact that we have these large outer planets in our solar system, like Jupiter, is really important, because if they weren't there, then every so often an asteroid would hit the Earth, which would cause a lot of problems. In addition, our planet has a core that rotates, a magma that rotates and produces an electric current. And that produces a magnetic field that protects us from solar radiation. If that magnetic field were not there, then charged radiation from the sun would kill us very quickly. But beyond that, what you see is that our planet is not only designed for life, but it's also designed for scientific investigation and cultural advancement. So for instance, our atmosphere doesn't only allow just the right energy through. It allows heat, it allows light, but it blocks the harmful radiation like X-rays and microwaves. But also the atmosphere is transparent so that we can study the stars. That's really remarkable. Also, it so happens that the light that goes through is just the perfect light for photosynthesis. It's the perfect light for heat and many other details that are necessary for light. But in addition to that, the atmosphere has just the right amount of oxygen and nitrogen to produce fire at a level that allows for technology. If the oxygen were higher or if the nitrogen were lower, what would happen is we'd have fires that would burn uncontrollably and burn down all our forests. But if the oxygen were too low or the nitrogen too high, then we wouldn't have enough fire to allow us to melt metals to produce tools that allows us to advance technologically. But one of my favorite examples, it goes back to the wavelength of light, because it so happens that visible light that can interact with our photodetectors, our photodetector cells, has the perfect wavelength for the optics of the eye. Because what happens is if the wavelength of visible light were much longer, our eyes would have to be the size of football fields, or else we would not be able to have high resolution vision. Or if the wavelength were smaller, there would be other issues. And what's so remarkable is the highest resolution possible for vision depends on how closely you can compact the photoreceptor cells in your retina. And it so happens that a photoreceptor cell can only be so small because it needs a certain number of molecules which are what interact with photons. But the smallest that these photoreceptor cells can be allows for a certain resolution of vision which matches the resolution which is possible by the wavelength of light, which is beautiful. Because what you see with the high resolution vision that we have represents the convergence of the fine-tuning of the laws of nature, the design of our atmosphere, the wavelength of light, the chemistry of photoreceptors, and the biology of the eye. So again, what we see is this remarkable evidence of design in every area of physics, from cosmology, the study of our entire universe, down to the study of atoms. So I'm hoping that this is an encouragement to you to recognize that the Christian faith is not based on just feeling or wishful thinking, but all the evidence we have from science, not to mention history, and the internal witness of our morality points to the truth of the Christian faith. Thank you very much.
Okay, I thought that was fabulous, and it was a really an unexpected opportunity a couple of weeks ago. I told him last night before we began the interview, I said, boy, if you had the time, I'd have you come out, I'd just sit down and listen to you. You do the whole seminar, because the credibility was, I think, a boost to what we're doing today. All right, but I'm also pulling in some resources, as you can tell, that boost a little my credibility maybe. But take this thought and hold on to it for the remainder of our minutes together today. Information. And certainly Dr. Miller alluded to this, and some of what you've seen already implies this. Information always has one source and one source only. Nobody disputes that, no matter what their worldview, and that is mind. You don't have information without mind, and that's the point of the definition of the cosmos as we describe it. Now, the cosmos, I pulled this one off Google, and this would be the definition they came up with. Quote, the word implies viewing the universe as a complete, complex, and orderly system or entity. Now think about that. I kind of doubt whether that Google writer who came up with that definition was a person of faith. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But you see how the elements of creation just seem to slip in sometimes to the description of these scientists use or writers use. Complete, complex, and orderly system. That just bespeaks of design to me, and I think probably to you too. Okay, now I'd like you to think with me about this. You know, I got to tell you, sometimes people just aren't persuaded, right? That might even apply to us once in a while, even when they're given solid, locked-down evidence. And that certainly doesn't mean that the evidence itself may be faulty. No, in fact, it may be the absolute truth. But sometimes, you know, tightly held values, strong emotions, maybe past circumstances, you know, will cause someone, even a brilliant scientist, to shape a worldview in such a way that avoids, suppresses, or even rejects what is in reality pure, unvarnished truth. So, in that light, consider this. Here's a quote from a secular astrophysicist whose worldview was seemingly being challenged, and so it seems he had to acknowledge, maybe drag kicking and screaming into it almost, had to acknowledge that there must be some kind of extra-dimensional intelligence of some kind out there. And he wrote this, quote, we live in a universe that came into existence through an exquisitely orchestrated, hold on to that, burst of energy, matter, and space-time at a specific moment in the past. Hubble Space Telescope images of distant galaxies provide visual evidence that we live in a universe that arose from and continues to expand from a singular creation event. Now remember, this is a secular astrophysicist. And I highlighted the words exquisitely orchestrated and creation in his statement. Why? Well, if something is orchestrated, you're going to be looking for a talented orchestra leader, maybe like our Greenville Symphony here, right? Whereas if something is created, you're going to look for a creator. That's just simple logic. The Mona Lisa hanging in the Louvre in Paris, some of you may have seen, that's the creation. The creator is Leonardo da Vinci. The two obviously have to go together. Well, so I want you to keep an open mind today. Now, maybe a few of you came in today and would tag yourself as an agnostic, maybe even one or two of you an atheist, but keep an open mind and just weigh the evidence, balance it up ahead carefully. We've already started to give you quite a bit, I think. And we're going to, by the way, give you an opportunity, there's the podium there, we have them in the side aisle, to ask your tough questions at the end of this seminar, at the end of the hour. So please stay with us for that. All right. Now, most of us have heard of the now deceased, world-renowned mathematician, astrophysicist, and ultimately metaphysicist. I think he stepped out of his lane a little bit there, Dr. Stephen Hawking. Now, Hawking, as you know, probably was tragically crippled and paralyzed by that terrible genetic disease, ALS. But Hawking was once quoted as making this rather surprising claim, I thought. He said, quote, cosmology is a religion for the intelligent atheist. Wow. Now, I don't know about you, but if somebody were to say to me, and I've had people say this, Steve, I'm an atheist, they don't want anything to do with religion typically, right? They certainly wouldn't want to imply that religion is anywhere connected with them. But listen to this. Dr. Hawking, brilliant man that he was, he says, no, as a matter of fact, if you're really an intelligent atheist, the cosmology, the stars, that's your religion. Very interesting. But now, there's someone who actively holds the opposite view. We're going to see in a minute. And I'd like you to watch him. He's a And just a brilliant thinker from the UK. I've watched a lot of his videos. He's done many interviews. He's done debates. He's a professor emeritus from Oxford University, Dr. John Lennox. There's a picture of him. And well respected around the world, written a number of books. And he's talking in this clip that I have here in a panel, and he's talking rather frankly and at times a bit humorously, as is his way of doing, about the illogical positions currently being clung to by many otherwise brilliant scientists and philosophers of our day on the topic of origins. Now, the clip begins with Dr. Lennox referencing Stephen Hawking and his book, The Grand Design. Watch and listen.
Because Stephen Hawking was just ahead of me at Cambridge. I can remember him quite well, though I didn't know him. And I was rather amused that when the Times interviewed him and asked him about religion, he said religion is a fairy story for people afraid of the dark. And I was asked to comment, so I said atheism is a fairy story for people afraid of the light. It's very kind of you to clap, but that proves nothing. Because one of the things... We're not anti-applause. No. One of the things you learn in the world that I work, and it's very important, is that a statement by a scientist is not necessarily a statement of science.
Amen.
Now, what amazes me about Hawking, who's a genius, obviously, is the heart of his book with Leonard Mlodinow, The Grand Design. The key statement is this. Because there is a law of gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. What? Because there is a law of gravity, because there is something, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. That's a flat contradiction. Secondly, because there is a law of gravity, he doesn't even say that gravity exists, but what would a law of gravity mean if there's no gravity? Worse still, the universe can and will create itself. If I say to you, X creates Y, roughly speaking, if you've got X, you get Y. If I say X creates X, well, if you've got X, you'll get X. And what does that mean? It means that nonsense remains nonsense even if scientists are writing it. So I was staggered that this is the key argument of his book. I would suggest that nobody with an undergraduate education in philosophy read that book before he published it. Because what he's reduced the whole thing to, and it's ironic, it's God or nothing now. Either God creates the universe or nothing does. And he gets into complications of the definition of nothing. But I was very fortunate in having a debate with Alan Guth, the father of modern cosmology at the MIT Harvard Faculty Club. And I said to him in this very friendly debate, I said, Alan, people are very confused about nothing out there. So I said, look, you can help us. When you, as an astrophysicist, talk about nothing, you do not mean nothing in the philosophical sense of absence of anything. He said, no, we don't. I said, thank you very much.
That's exactly right.
So the point is that these people are claiming to get a universe from nothing, but they're failing to do it. And the most amusing of all, I must tell you this, how would you like this if it was submitted to you? Lawrence Krauss, astrophysicist, because something is physical, nothing must be physical, especially if you define it as the absence of something. I mean, that is utter absurdity, and it's on about page 4 of his book. Now, the point is, and Bill is the world expert on this, so I'll stop now, that the standard model of the universe leads you with a start from nothing. And they're having a great problem to get a universe from nothing, so they redefine nothing. As a Christian, I don't believe the universe came from nothing. I believe it came from God, but God is not physical.
Amen.
Okay, I love that, strong practical points of logic that Lennox uses. You can find a lot of his videos up on YouTube. It really makes for interesting watching and listening. Now, one other point on Hawking that I just researched recently, he was, of course, committed to not bringing in God into the equation at all, as Dr. Lennox implied here. So at one point, he created one of his big giant formulas that would just give me a migraine if I were to look at it. But he later admitted in life, now what he was trying to do, by the way, with this formula is to prove that there could be multiverses out there, that we just happen to win the lottery, as Dr. Miller said. We're just one of them. And so he created this big, long formula. But he later admitted this. He said that, I was amazed he was this frank, he said one of his very important symbols that tie that formula together, it wouldn't work without, he said, called that his imaginary universe symbol. How about that? And you know, after I read that, I said, you know, I really would rather anchor my belief, I think, in actual evidence rather than some imaginary hypothesis, no matter how brilliantly it's postulated. I have a feeling you're going to say the same thing. All right, we're going to dig a little bit deeper now. I want you to watch with me. This is a really neat little short video. It really flies along. A group of PhDs with a very impressive array of scientific credentials, giving quick responses to their perspectives on ID, intelligent design, in the universe and of all life. Take a look.
As a scientist,
microbiologist,
biochemist,
as a geologist,
neuroscientist,
physician,
biologist, and an engineer.
I think there is overwhelming evidence for intelligent design in nature.
I see intelligent design in a history of life,
in the genetic code of life,
in the molecular machines inside our cells,
in the complexity of life,
in the information embedded in living things,
in the operation of the human brain,
in the features of the human body,
in the chicken and egg causal circularity of life.
As a mathematician, I see great evidence of purpose in the universe.
As a molecular biologist, I see evidence for design everywhere I look, pretty much. Nature is incomprehensible without inference to purpose and to intelligent design.
The properties of the universe as a whole, and our planet in particular, were fine-tuned for our benefit and for our survival.
In my view, the fossil evidence clearly points towards intelligent design.
I see life as design because when I look at life at the molecular level, I see exquisite engineering.
all cells contain DNA, which include lots of information, and information is only the product of a mind.
Darwin thought living cells were just blobs of jelly, but when I look in a living cell, I see evidence of factories, machines, three-dimensional architectures, enormous amounts of encoded information.
There's power generators, there's manufacturing plants.
Life contains many features that we know from experience only arise from the activity of intelligent agents.
The genetic code is like a software program. It's like somebody would have had to be a coder, would have had to form this particular genetic code. When I see that order and design, I have a really hard time believing that random mutation and natural selection alone can cause the complexity and the diversity we see in life.
When you look at nature at large, what you see is incredible examples of innovation which surpass human technology. Examples include the flight capabilities of a hummingbird, sonar and bats, and greater innovation always implies greater intelligence from the designer.
If you read the message from the molecules, it's really clear. They say clearly, intelligent design, intelligent design, intelligent design is the source of life.
Well, you probably recognize Dr. Miller there in three clips. You see why I was really enthused that we could actually get him on an interview last night. Well, as you can certainly guess by now, the evidence, we believe, strongly points to a creator of this vast universe, including, of course, all life on Earth. And this creator, by the way, must live eternally outside of this space-time dimension. Scientists will point out, because when God created this, you want to call it the Big Bang, Genesis 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, as one of our members said to me one time, Yeah, Big Bang. God said bang, and it was created. But the Creator had to have been outside of the dimension he created, because time, a lot of people aren't aware of this, time was created along with matter and energy, everything in the universe. So was time. So he exists eternally outside of time. And of course, that matches up really perfectly with so much of what we see in our Bible. A lot of the new science in the last century or two, showing the exquisite design and all it contains, balances a lot of scriptural verses. All right, you heard me earlier mention Dr. Meyer. You just saw him briefly in the clip there. He's Dr. Miller's boss, although Dr. Miller helped him co-write his last book. And he's probably the best known, Dr. Meyer is, among the brilliant and respected spokesmen and researchers, a picture of him, in the field of ID. He's written 3 monumental books over recent years on ID. Signature in the Cell was his first one, I think about 8 or 9 years ago. There it is. Darwin's Doubt was the next one, and then his latest capstone volume that Dr. Miller helped him write, Return of the God Hypothesis. Now, I've read Signature in the Cell and Return of the God Hypothesis. Let me tell you, they're about that thick, and they are, I mean, you better be ready, over a period of maybe weeks or months. Very well documented. He's probably got 100 pages of just references that you looked at. This guy is an amazing researcher. Now, I want you to watch and listen to another clip. This is Dr. Meyer, as he builds a great compacted summary case, I think, for the purposeful design of the cosmos. Watch this.
Modern physics has revealed evidence of design in the very fabric of the universe. Physicists have discovered that the fundamental physical parameters of our universe have been finely tuned against all odds to make our universe capable of hosting life. Even the slightest alterations in the values of key factors, such as the strength of gravity or electromagnetism, or the masses of elementary particles, would render life impossible. We live in a kind of Goldilocks universe, where the fundamental forces of physics have just the right balance, and the properties of matter have just the right characteristics and configurations to make life possible. To illustrate this idea, the late Cambridge physicist Sir John Polkinghorne imagined a universe-creating machine with numerous dials, each representing some critical parameter. The various dials each have an almost infinite range of settings, yet all are set just right. Not surprisingly, Polkinghorne and many physicists have concluded that the improbable cosmic fine-tuning of our actual universe points to a cosmic fine-tuner. As legendary Cambridge astrophysicist Sir Fred Hoyle argued, a common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect has monkeyed with physics to make life possible. Could this super-intellect have been an alien? Not a chance. Cosmic fine-tuning has been present from the beginning of the universe, and thus cannot be explained by any agent that arises after the beginning. Instead, fine-tuning is better explained by an intelligent agent outside the universe who could design its structure as a whole. To avoid this conclusion, some physicists have postulated another speculative hypothesis: the existence of a vast number of other parallel universes. This so-called multiverse idea portrays our universe as the outcome of a cosmic lottery in which some universe-generating mechanism spits out billions and billions of universes. So many that our universe, with its improbable combination of life-conducive factors, would eventually have to arise. Yet advocates of the multiverse overlook an obvious problem. All such proposals, whether based on something called inflationary cosmology or string theory, postulate universe-generating mechanisms that themselves require prior, unexplained fine-tuning, thus taking us back to the need for an ultimate or transcendent fine-tuner or designing intelligence. Many of us call this intelligence God.
Okay, thank you. Now, Micah, in the interest of time, and because we had Dr. Miller on a little bit longer interview than I was, and I'm glad we did, let's go ahead and eliminate the next Stephen Meyer video. I think it's number 5 you listed there. And but I want to press on. And what about the possibility, by the way, of scientists, I think this is on one of our flyers, finding somewhere out there in the universe an Earth 2.0. In other words, another planet way out there that might have the exact set of, as Dr. Meyer said, Goldilocks parameters to permit complex or intelligent life. Well, cosmologists have examined now, I understand, over 5,000 Earth-type planets in our in our galaxy. That's where as far as they can see to that detail. Within other solar systems, 5,000. But unfortunately, for many who are just banking on the fact that life evolved in so many other planets, not one of them, not one of those 5,000 comes even close to the precise set of circumstances, the precisely balanced fine-tuning you're hearing about today as our planet. Nothing even close. Okay. The ancients. Now, you know, for centuries, ancient peoples have gazed up into the starry heavens, and they've just pondered who or what made all those mysterious lights in the sky. And undoubtedly, many wondered about the origins of the universe. So as we saw a little bit earlier, now we have these incredible satellites. You should see a picture of them in a minute. You've got the Hubble, the Webb, and now the COBE, that infrared amazing satellite, and other data gathering telescopes and optical sensing satellites. And they're revealing more and more and more of these ancient mysteries surrounding origins, black holes, multiple galaxies never before imagined, and all kinds of elements out there, and other kinds of, supernovas, et cetera, that were never imagined before. So now we're closing in on the last section of our time today. And if any of you would like to take a couple of minute break, and there's water out in the lobby, there's restrooms there. And we've got officially about another 5 to 8 minutes to the 3 o'clock hour. Now I talked to Pastor Greg here a little bit earlier, and he gave me the okay for this. So if you have timed your schedule in such a way that you had other things to do, and you have to get to those, and 3 o'clock was your deadline, please feel free to leave. Nobody's going to say anything. I won't be offended. We want to honor the time commitment we have. However, we would love for you, if you're willing to stay, I would say we've probably got about another maybe 14, 15 minutes of good detail, and my friend Mike is going to be coming up in a second to share a little bit with you. So if you want to take a short break and come back, you're welcome to do that, or if you need to leave, again, please, we would invite you to do so. But now, I'm going to ask my friend Mike to come up, and in his own inimitable style, I want you to hear what he has to say. Mike.
Thank you, Steve. I thought that I would go ahead and start my short narrative time this afternoon just by building on what you guys have already seen and heard today. That there really are some concrete must-haves if there's to be a universe fit for life on planet Earth. And these seem to many of us as incredible evidence of an eternal, all-powerful creator existing in a dimension outside of time and space. And he had to have been there, the original cause of all that exists. So to Christians, as Brother Steve mentioned, the Big Bang was detailed in a very simple and wonderfully concise statement opening in Genesis 1:1 that says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." But even taking a more agnostic or neutral position about the causes of the universe's sudden beginning, we still find that modern science acknowledges that the universe suddenly was as the result of some kind of unimaginably powerful and expansive explosion. But many physicists and astrophysicists are now beginning to acknowledge that there's a clear design that's just inherent in this origin's beginning. They describe it as a finely tuned expansion event where all the matter and energy in the universe expanded from an extraordinary and high energy state. However, balancing that incredible energy was control and guidance through natural laws that were purposely designed to produce a habitable universe and, simply put, a place for all life on planet Earth. So consider with me some of these finely tuned factors that make our universe possible. So first of all, if the strong nuclear force was slightly more powerful, then there would actually be no hydrogen, which is an essential element of life. If it was actually just a little bit weaker, then hydrogen would be the only element in existence. Secondly, if the weak nuclear force was slightly different, then either we wouldn't have enough helium to generate heavy elements in the stars, or the stars would just burn out too quickly, and then therefore supernova explosions could not scatter heavy elements across the universe. Thirdly, if the electromagnetic force was slightly stronger or weaker, then atomic bonds and subsequently complex molecules wouldn't even be able to form. And then the last one I'll share with you today is that if the value of the gravitational constant was slightly larger, one consequence would be that stars would become too hot and burn out too quickly. Or if it was smaller, then stars would never burn at all, and heavy elements would not be produced. But I realize in the interest of time, I can only share these 4 of what many scientists believe are close to 30 cosmological constants. They're the must-haves among the amazingly fine-tuned laws exhibited by our universe. This, we believe, powerfully shows an example of what's called the specified complexity found in nature. So these laws or constants are complex in that their values and settings are highly unlikely, but they're also specified in that they match the specific requirements needed for life. To get a more visual idea of this fantastic fine-tuning of our universe, let's watch some of this great video entitled The Fine-Tuning of the Universe.
From galaxies and stars, down to atoms and subatomic particles, the very structure of our universe is determined by these numbers. These are the fundamental constants and quantities of the universe. Scientists have come to the shocking realization that each of these numbers has been carefully dialed to an astonishingly precise value, a value that falls within an exceedingly narrow, life-permitting range. If any one of these numbers were altered by even a hair's breadth, no physical, interactive life of any kind could exist anywhere. There'd be no stars, no life, no planets, no chemistry. Consider gravity, for example. The force of gravity is determined by the gravitational constant. If this constant varied by just 1 in 10 to the 60th parts, none of us would exist. To understand how exceedingly narrow this life-permitting range is, imagine a dial divided into 10 to the 60th increments. To get a handle on how many tiny points on the dial this is, compare it to the number of cells in your body, or the number of seconds that have ticked by since time began. If the gravitational constant had been out of tune by just one of these infinitesimally small increments, the universe would either have expanded and thinned out so rapidly that no stars could form and life couldn't exist, or it would have collapsed back on itself with the same result: no stars, no planets, and no life.
Yeah, and the intelligentdesign.org site further lists the odds that give a small taste as to the degree of fine-tuning that is necessary to yield a life-friendly universe. So what this all shows us is the incredible and astronomically precise and even purposeful care and planning that went into the crafting of the laws and constants of the universe. And we feel that this point unmistakably to intelligent design. As Nobel laureate in physics Charles Townes stated, intelligent design, as one sees it from a scientific point of view, seems to be quite real. This is a very special universe. It's remarkable that it came out just this way. If the laws of physics weren't just the way they are, we couldn't be here at all. The sun couldn't be there, the laws of gravity and nuclear laws and magnetic theory, quantum mechanics, and so on have to be just the way they are for us to be here. Some scientists may respond and say, well, you know what, there's just an enormous number of universes. Each one's a little bit different. This one just happened to turn out right. That's a theory. It's I guess a fantastic theory, or guess maybe. As Dr. Miller presented, the multiverse theory. It assumes that there are an enormous, and some proponents of the theory would even say an infinite number of universes. And the laws could be different for each one. We just so happen to be in that one magic universe where everything, as I guess the random odds would have it, are perfectly tuned to permit life. So take a look with me at what as has been mentioned a couple times, a universe-generating machine might look like, and the totally speculative nature of the multiverse hypothesis that some scientists have just latched on to avoid the conclusion of a designing extra-dimensional intelligence.
Some have gone beyond empirical science.
Well, Dr. Miller covered that pretty well too, so I think let's move ahead.
Okay, yeah,
Mike,
so I'm going to turn the
you.
podium back over to Steve. I hope that most of you guys would agree with me. The facts that we've shared today are just simply buttressing the already well-documented conclusion that a powerful, all-knowing, eternal creator God, we would strongly suggest the God of the Bible, was not only the creator of all, but as is stated in the Bible, he holds everything together. There's much more on that in Seminar 2 of the series, but hope to see you guys then.
Okay, thanks, Mike. All right, so in the interest of time, now somebody may have come here today just to hear about aliens. I hope that's not the only reason you came, but it's time to think about aliens for a few minutes. And, I know that's a captivating topic. Are we really being visited by extraterrestrials? So in a moment, you're going to want, and that really has a bearing on intelligent design and everything that we're talking about here today, too. So in a moment, we're going to watch a couple of short video clips. I think we may clip one of them, and in the interest of time again. But don't forget, as we close this presentation part of our seminar, going a little bit over, and some of you are bearing with us, I appreciate that. We're going to have a Q&A time. And Ward's going to be up here, and we're going to start off with an opportunity for you to ask your really tough questions. And let's now do this. Look at Dr. Hugh Ross. Ross is an astrophysicist, a researcher, and an author. His best-selling landmark book is called The Fingerprint of God. You saw a picture of it earlier up there. It's a landmark book. Now, Ross started his early professional career as an agnostic, and ultimately, by virtue of the evidence he was seeing in his career, he's a very bright astrophysicist, he became a Christian. And so he saw the close tie-in with a number of scriptures in the Bible and what he was seeing as some of the newest evidence of intelligent design in deep space, in the cosmos. Now, watch with me a couple of these short clips. We'll cut, I think, the last one maybe, Micah. Dr. Ross is going to talk a little bit about the big gorilla in the center of the room that many scientists don't want to, either push aside or ignore, and that is, what about the possibility of UFOs and extraterrestrial life way out there somewhere in the universe? And so, maybe here come the aliens. All right, Micah. Okay, I would go ahead with his first clip, Micah.
What's happening today is not just the United States, but several governments around the world have said they're going to release their classified documents on UFOs. But they've already released quite a lot. And I'm anticipating that the new releases are simply going to affirm what's already been released in the past. Namely, that there's millions of UFO sightings being reported, and most of them can be naturally explained, or military events, or they could be a hoax. But there's a 1% residual, and this is what's got the public fascinated. But what I've seen in my own experience of processing UFO reports is that where you've got multiple observers in different sites, where you can actually triangulate the path of the UFO going through the atmosphere, there are times when they're recorded at moving at 18,000 miles per hour. But as these observers see them going through our atmosphere, they see no heat friction and no sonic boom.
Right.
And there's 2,000 instances where these things have been observed going through the atmosphere and crashing into the earth. And you go to the crash site, the ground is depressed. There's a shallow crater. If there's snow, the snow is melted. Vegetation is damaged. But when you investigate the site, there's no debris, there's no artifacts. If this was an actual physical craft, there would be debris that you could actually pick up. In this case, there's nothing. But you do see that something has happened, because something depressed the ground, something melted the snow. and damage the vegetation.
Could it be a meteorite?
Well, if it's a meteorite, you're going to find bits and pieces of the meteor.
Okay.
And when a meteorite goes through the atmosphere, you see a bright glow. There's heat friction. And if the object is moving faster than the speed of sound, you're going to get a sonic boom. The fact that there's no sonic boom, no heat friction, and at the site there's nothing to recover, tells us we're dealing with something that definitely is real, but it's not physical. These things violate the laws of physics. And what's being revealed in the US reports are naval pilots recording these UFOs moving at thousands of miles per hour and making sharp right angle turns. A physical object can't do that. If you make that sharp right angle turn, it's going to do damage to the craft, and any being on board would be destroyed if they're physical.
Oh.
So again, we're dealing with non-physical reality.
Okay, great. Well, I think some maybe startling points there by Dr. Ross on the mystery of what these objects may or may not be. Now, again, in the interest of time, we're going to do one more clip. This is 1 minute of this continuing interview, and then I will close it up, and we're going to get to our Q&A. So one more clip. That last one, Micah, that's 1 minute, or the
You
next
as
one.
an astrophysicist, you mentioned that you went to Caltech. You don't believe that in the entire universe that there couldn't possibly be another planet with other humans or other beings on them?
Well, I think it's possible that God may have created life on another planet. I can tell you as an astronomer, we've yet to see even a star that could possibly support a planet orbiting it in which advanced life is possible, other than our own star, the sun. Everywhere we look in the universe, so far, all we see are conditions that are highly hostile to advanced life. But one of the chapters I put in Lights in the Sky, Little Green Men is why it's impossible for physical beings like us to traverse interstellar space. Interstellar space is not empty, it's filled with particles. And if you move your spaceship at, say, 10% the velocity of light, you'll do damage to your spaceship before you get to another planet.
You as an astronaut.
Okay. When there, when I went through a little bit more of that video, he basically said that scientists really have calculated that it's going to be physically impossible for any craft, no matter how advanced, to go more than about 1/12 of the speed of light. And he made the point that the nearest galaxy to us, which is the Large Magellanic Cloud, is far enough away to where if you were going, we're nowhere near 1/12 the speed of light with our most advanced spaceships, we probably never will be. But if you could be, it would still take you close to 18 million years just to get to the next closest galaxy. So in the jargon of the youth, just ain't happening. Well, all right, now if these UFOs are not physical, and I think and if you see more of his videos, they're on our little read and watch list in the back if you want to take them. He wrote a book called Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men, and there's a video of that title. But he gives you some theories about what these things really are. And I think he's right. And they're not physical. And so if somebody wants to ask that question in the Q&A, that's fine. But let's get into that Q&A. So Ward, if you want to step to the mic, as Ward, retired long-time professor at Bob Jones University. And Ward, come on up.
Steve mentioned my name is Ward Anderson. I'd like to thank you for attending the seminar this afternoon. We thought there might be someone here who would have a question about what was presented today. And if you do, we've set up 2 microphones, one on each of the aisles. They're toward the back. So we'd like for you to ask your question there. And before you to do that, I had a question for Steve, if he's going to come back. I am. No, okay. All right. My question is, true science is based on hard facts, things that you can test, observe through a microscope, weigh on a scale, and the like. But philosophy and religion work in the realm of beliefs and things that can't be seen through a telescope. That being the case, some scientists think that philosophy or religion has no place in any real scientific discussion. What is your view?
Well, I think part of what we talked about here today answers that, in that you heard several scientists talking about the fact that so much of the new science really matches up beautifully with what's in the Bible. The book of Job, the oldest, we think the oldest book that, in the Bible, written probably a couple of thousand years before Christ was born, that in the book of Job, it talks about the circle of the earth. And I'm told that the Hebrew, you know Hebrew, I think a little bit, word, the circle of the earth. And that really says in the Hebrew that it's a sphere. Now, up until that time, and for many, many years after that, a lot of peoples, a lot of cultures taught that the earth was flat. That's just one tiny example. But you hear things in other religions, for example, in the Hindu religion, of course there's a variety of sects within Hinduism, but largely you read things in the Vedas and some of the other holy books talking about the earth being suspended on the backs of an elephant. And things like this that just obviously we know are illogical in terms of the science that we know. Same with many of the other religions. So no time to go much deeper than that. But Christianity is the one that lines up just about perfectly with everything that we've seen so far in science. So I think that's an important aspect.
All right. If there are others here who have a question about today's material, please don't hesitate to come to a microphone and ask it. All right.
Why do you believe other theories like those put forward by those who would be called Darwinian scientists that seem to be logical? They seem to put forth the answers for how the universe came about. Why do you believe them to not be true when they suggest there's no need to invoke an intelligent designer or creator?
Okay, now part of that, I'm sorry, I didn't hear. So the mic, if you could get just a little bit closer to the mic. My hearing isn't the best either.
Why do you believe other theories like those put forward by who would be called Darwinian scientists? They seem to be logical. They put forth answers for how the universe came about. Why do you think that they are not true when they suggest there's no need to invoke an intelligent creator or designer?
Well, I think they're not true because a lot of what we saw now is evidence that what is true, that there is an all-intelligent designer. So many scientists are realizing that. And you heard Dr. Lennox talking about how illogical their positions are. Well, you know, the Bible has a verse for that. A lot of you would know it. It's called Romans 1. And there, Paul says that, you know, they know the truth, but they suppress it. They know the truth and they suppress it. And how do they know it? Well, Paul says because they can see it from what's created, what's made, what's around them. That's a profoundly important verse, I think, with the subjects that we have today. All right, I know there's maybe a couple of more out there, questions that you might have. Okay, and again, kind of talk up so I can hear you pretty well.
Is this good?
Yeah, there you go.
The question I wanted to ask is on this paper. It says, are aliens actually demons?
Are aliens actually demons? If you want my personal opinion, yes. Now, God called me to the Christian faith back in about 1987, but I lived half my life out in wild California till I was about 40 as a non-Christian. During one of those years, I would go up to the High Sierras a lot and go fishing and skiing and whatnot, and I was climbing a mountain one day, looking out toward the east over the Owens Valley. And I also have a little bit of experience being in the Air Force, that I know a lot about aircraft. I'm an aircraft nut. And I saw this thing coming up the valley, and it was very quiet. It was late in the afternoon. It was didn't have any empennage. In other words, no tail section, didn't have wings, didn't have rotating beacons with all the fighters would have, because sometimes the fighters would come up and down the valley. And it had none of that, and it was completely silent. I watched it. It looked like a copper disc. The sun was sort of reflecting off of it, and then it disappeared behind the mountain over here. Nothing, no noise, nothing, and nothing that resembles an aircraft. Now, that was something. And I had one other sighting later in life that I thought was probably up in space, actually. Looked like a formation of about 7 little dots, and I knew they couldn't be satellites. So I've seen these things. I know there are a couple of people even at our church that I've talked to in the past that have seen things. And what are they? I think they're demonic. I really do. That's my opinion. And that's where Hugh Ross is going with with a lot of his studies. And he mentioned a few of the points now why he doesn't think they're real. They're breaking the laws of physics. Now, the laws of physics are the same 20 billion light years out as they are here. Laws of physics don't change in the universe. You have to be subject to those laws. Any extraterrestrial visitor would have to be as well. And so, since these things don't perform within the laws of physics, they vanish, they pop in and out, they come, they make right angle turns at thousands of miles an hour, then the thought is that's got to be something non-dimensional, and I think it's demonic, frankly.
Could they be angels?
Well, fallen angels are demons, of course, number one. And could they be good angels, the ones that do God's bidding? Logic might tell you that probably not. Why? Because they're doing things that seem sometimes hostile to Christianity, to mankind. They're doing things that people that are devious. Some people even claim that they've seen these beings, right? And they're usually not very friendly, these apparitions or whatever they're seeing. And so they don't behave like any good angel that does God's bidding that I've read about in the Bible. And I don't know about you. So, I don't think that it's logically coherent that they could be. I think they're demonic. Somebody else have a question? Back there? Don, you had a question, I thought. Don't be shy.
Yes, thank you for hosting this seminar today. This has been profound. But I do have a question, sitting here listening to this. Is this whole intelligent design movement among scientists simply a way to counter or object to Darwinian evolution?
The intelligent design movement is based on evidence, as you've heard today. And the non-intelligent design movement, which has been around for a couple hundred years, the Darwinian evolutionary model, just doesn't fit anymore, does it? I mean, you just saw some evidence. We could have gone on for hours and hours. I don't think he'd still be here. The evidence is just overwhelming. But again, going back to Romans 1, people suppress the truth. There's a lot of things I didn't want to see before I was a Christian. I just wanted to ignore. I didn't want to think much about dying because I was afraid of what might come after. So I suppressed that truth for quite a while. So I don't know if this is answering your question, but there's really 2 points of view now. It's either you're believing that that chance, random chance, mutations and natural selection, those three together in terms of life, and in terms of the universe, random chance alone, are responsible for everything that we see. The beauty, the harmony in the universe, the balance, the cosmic laws, et cetera, and in life, of course, that mind-boggling, I hope we may do a second seminar, we don't know yet, but mind-boggling complexity in DNA is just phenomenal, and the new things that are discovering there about DNA, just beyond imagination, really. So there's only 2 ways to go. Either you're going to believe in that evidence or you're going to cling to things that are no longer credible. And that's the only 2 options. Does that answer your question somewhat? Okay, anybody else?
Thank you for hosting this. You mentioned that you believe that UFO sightings are demonic. Would you see a link there with the Old Testament references to worship of the host of heaven, worship of the starry host, the idolatrous worship of stars and planets from the Old Testament, or no?
Yeah, isn't there a Bible verse that says there's a demon behind every idol? I know there is. And so demonic possession, demonic oppression, demonic manipulation, by the way, of minds, causing people to worship idols, rocks and things that have nothing at all. God says, Greg, you know what book this is in, but that you make a piece, you get a piece of wood and you carve it, and the rest of the wood you use for fire, and then the carving that you made out of that wood, you bow down before it. And of course, what is that driven by? That's driven by demonism. If you want to really see demonism in full flower, so to speak, read the book of Revelation. and the incredibly frightening things that are coming on this earth when those 7 years of tribulation begin. So demonic elements exist. And I think that because I think we're getting closer, well, we are, logic implied, closer and closer to end times every day that passed since Christ went up back to heaven. We're getting closer, and I just wonder if maybe these apparitions, and they're getting more and more frequent, it seems, of UFOs, sightings, and even aliens that are doing not pleasant things to people, if you look at the internet. Those are just evidences where God's pulling back a little bit and allowing some demonic activity that we just haven't seen before. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. All right, anybody else? No? Warren, don't be shy.
Well, I think we've talked about this already in this question. If this universe is so incredibly large with billions or even trillions of stars and planets and even galaxies, why is it that we're the only planet in those trillions that have intelligent life? Why would God make it so big?
And what was the last part of that?
Why would God make this universe so big and huge?
Yeah.
There's no other life out there.
Yeah, and of course, you're only going to get my opinion again on that. Why did he make the universe so big? But, you know, to glorify himself, to get glory through what's out there. I mean, look at the Psalms are so beautiful. I love the Psalm passage. It says that heavens declare what? The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament his majesty. Day after day they pour forth speech, etc. And so there are verses like that in the universe. He created all of these things for his pleasure and for his glory, but also for our pleasure and enjoyment, but also more than that, to shout loudly of his existence, that he is. And I think, again, more and more of this evidence now coming in, maybe that's, again, another part of the end times scenario where God is just revealing more of these things and giving sort of enlightenment to the scientists to be able to discover them, both in the universe and then in the science laboratories. So, anybody else? Oh, okay, sorry.
Yes, sir. You mentioned in reference to aliens being strictly demonic and that the alien aircraft had to be restricted to the physics and dimensions that we're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the things that were referenced in the videos were referring to string theory and the subset of superstring theory, where it's tendented that there are additional dimensions than what we're familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
the 5th to the 10th dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
Would it not stand to reason then that there may be other technologies that are operating extra-dimensionally that would be able to perform those feats?
Extra-dimensionally. Yeah, that's a good question, and that's been asked. And I think if you look at some of the information out on the Read and Watch list, Dr. Ross and others, goes into a bit of depth of that. And here's the main issue, and I think Dr. Meyer addresses this too, is that there can be any number of speculative theories to explain that, and that would be one, certainly string theory, which is so mind-boggling I always get a headache trying to figure it out, but it's quantum mechanics, string theory, the multiverse, they're all part of the same concept of theoretical physics. And first of all, you don't even have physics, you don't even have physical laws until you have a mind, and where does mind come from? Now, if there's mind in other universes, if there's structure to those other universes, then there had to be a creator of those universes. All you're doing is moving the problem back out into a possible additional realms. And could an extraterrestrial terrestrial being or intelligence cross that dimension that they're ostensibly in and come into this dimension? I can't prove that they can't, but I would rather anchor my belief system on logical, scientific evidence and the physical laws of this universe that we know very well, rather than hypothetical ifs, as I think I said earlier. So that's the best I can do to answer that question, I think.
Thank you. One other question. You mentioned your belief that aliens are more or less strictly demonic. Are you familiar at all with the works of Dr. Michael Heiser or Timothy Almerin?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No, but I'll tell you what, if you write down those names again and give them to me, or give them to Ward, I'll look them up. Sure, I'm willing to do that, absolutely.
Thank you.
And again, whether they're demonic or not, you might call that a theory too. But it's one that sort of addresses some of the evidence, because there's no evidence of when they crash, there's nothing. When they make right-angle turns, you're breaking the laws of this universe. So there's some evidence that they're not of this dimension. So, anybody else? Okay, well, let me, I think, get off the podium finally. I'm happy to do that. And Greg, did you want to step up? And we'll close it out today. Or Ward, let's see, I'm sorry.
While he's coming, if you do have a question you'd like to write, Steve, he'd be glad to answer you. And his address, if you'd like to jot this down, is SLAMBE@outlook.com. SLAMBE@outlook.com. And if you have something you'd like to ask Steve, he'll be glad to get an answer back to you.
All right, I just want to thank everybody for coming out this afternoon. My name is Greg. I'm the pastor here at Trinity Bible Church. We appreciate you all coming out. If you are interested in this topic and would be interested in another presentation, there's a sign-up sheet in the lobby. There's a desk. You could sign up. You'd be welcome to do that. If that's interesting to you, please do that on the way out. If you would be interested ever in worshiping with us, we certainly are welcome. We're a church that welcomes visitors. Tomorrow, for example, tomorrow morning we'll meet at 10:30 for our normal Sunday morning worship service. You don't have to be a member of our church to come. You don't have to be a Christian to come. If you would just be interested in coming, I want you to know that you're welcome. I'm actually preaching through the book of Hebrews, which is a book that encourages Christians that are facing very difficult times. And one of the things that causes people to think deeply is, if I'm a Christian and God loves me, why do I go through such times of difficulty and suffering? And that's actually will be the topic in tomorrow morning's message at 10:30. I want to close just by reading a couple of verses, not a sermon at all. We've heard a number of references to the Genesis account, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I want to actually read from the New Testament something that is said in John chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. So in the very beginning, before there was anything, there was God. And the Bible says there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The question, of course, would be then, who is this Word? Well, in verse 14 of John 1, it says, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And that would be what we celebrated Christmas each year. That would be the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ, God in the flesh. And what do we know about the Lord Jesus Christ, God in the flesh? Well, if you go further down in John chapter 1, in verse 35, it says this, that John was there with two of his disciples, and as he was interacting with the disciples, they then saw the Word who was flesh coming towards him. And John said, verse 29, behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And that's the essence of Christianity. That's the essence of what we celebrate as a gospel-believing church here at Trinity, that there is a God, he's real, that God had a son. His name is Jesus, the second person of the Trinity. The Word became flesh. He came into the world. You say, why would he come into the world? So that he could go to a cross and suffer and die for sinners like us to pay the price of our sin. And all of us who put faith in the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, we are forgiven, and we then begin a personal relationship with God. That's what we believe as Christians. I hope that's what you would at least consider. Again, if you would ever like to learn more, you're always welcome to come and worship with us. We come together every Sunday morning at 10:30 for our worship time. Even if you're not a Christian, you certainly would be welcome. If I could help you at all, I'll be in the lobby on the way out today. And again, we appreciate you coming. I'll turn it back to Steve.
Got my mic off now. Just one last thing. Remember, on your way out, and I think Mike is back there, my co-op. You're welcome to take a copy of the Read and Watch list, because there's a lot of detail on there, a lot of videos I cited under different categories and other resources there. So you're welcome to take that today. And thank you so much, and God bless you.